Dementia my ass. If she can do that while having dementia, what the hell is wrong with me? Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about Britney Spears again. Y'all can't get enough of it, it appears, so I'm here to deliver. There is a new documentary, there are new updates. We've talked about her before, but let's get into it once again. In case you're new here, my name's Leeja. I'm a real-life lawyer on a mission to demystify the law and how it affects your everyday life. That being said, I may be a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. Nothing that I say should ever be construed as legal advice, and you should always seek the advice of a licensed attorney before making any legal decisions. Okay? Let me take a pause and thank the sponsor of today's video, me. Oh, this is from my merch store. It says, left-wing nut who is very annoying. It's one of my favorite mean comments I've ever gotten. And now you could have this stamped on many various pieces of paraphernalia if you want to go over to my merch store. Link in bio. Delicious. Also, are you a law student who's thinking about law school but you're not sure what direction you want to go in? Or you want help to ensure you have a successful law school experience, or you know which direction you want to take your career? Or if you're a content creator and you need help getting your YouTube off the ground, or maybe you've gotten it off the ground but you are wondering why you're not growing? Or if you're an established content creator and you're trying to draft your first brand deal, or you have copyright questions, I'm your gal. Link in the description down below. It's super easy to set up a session with me. You just go in, you can see my calendar and when I'm free, and you just make an appointment. It's that simple. But let's get on with this video, oh my god. Okay, so I've made other videos about Britney Spears. You can watch them after this one, but in case you've been living under a rock and you need a bit of an update, Britney Spears has been under a conservatorship since 2007. Remember that time when she shaved her head, kind of had a very public breakdown? Conservatorship ever since then. That's 13 years if you're counting. As a recap, there are two different types of conservatorships. One is conservatorship of the person and the other is of the estate. Of the person gives the conservator, the person in charge, total control over the conservatee, that's Britney Spears in this case, total control over her life, where she goes, who visits her, her medical treatment. Yes, it takes away her ability to consent or not consent to medical treatments. Gives them complete control over the person. Then you've got conservatorship of the estate, where the conservator, again that's the person in control, controls the finances of the conservatee, again Britney in this case. So the conservator decides how to run the business, whatever business she has. They decide who's on payroll, they decide who comes and goes in the house in terms of like cleaning services, mental health services, who's getting paid what, how they invest the money. They do have a fiduciary duty to the conservatee to make sound investment choices and to do things in the conservatee's best interest. However, as Britney's case is highlighted, there's not a ton of oversight, even if the courts are supposed to have oversight over the running of this conservatorship. A lot of times it's lacking, and it might be because there's a lack of funding in the like conservatorship courts, or there's a lot of leeway because it's very paternalistic. And we think someone who's been put under a conservatorship, which is someone who's been deemed by a doctor to be mentally incompetent to take care of themselves and their own finances, we've decided that like we just need to get someone to take care of them, and then it's out of our hands and out of our control and out of our lives, and we don't have to think about them anymore. Usually conservatorships are used for elderly folks, people who are no longer able to take care of themselves and who have some sort of estate that needs to be managed. And there are people who are professional conservators, meaning that they are these third-party people who come in and just manage the estate or the person in their day-to-day life.
I'm here to help.
Sometimes it's family members, it can vary, it depends on the situation, but it is a system that is rampant with abuse and ripe for abuse because they really don't have a ton of oversight, because it's not something that we've really thought that much about prior to Britney Spears. So her case is kind of highlighting and bringing to light a lot of the abuses that have been going on for years within the conservatorship system, and also just like larger questions of how we treat people that we've deemed incompetent and what that means and what their rights are or should be. It's a whole thing, you know? All right, so until recently, and we'll get into the latest updates, but Britney's father, Jamie Spears, has been the conservator of Britney's estate and of her person. So he has been controlling everything, calling the shots. She's basically been his circus monkey for the last like 13 years. But after they've determined that this person is incompetent and needs longer term help, then it becomes a permanent conservatorship. After that, the burden shifts to the conservatee, the one under the conservatorship, to prove that they are no longer incompetent. So it's a real vicious cycle. Okay, well, with that background out of the way, hopefully we're up to speed. I'm gonna watch this new Netflix documentary called Britney versus Spears. Just another documentary looking at her background. I don't know what could possibly be new to share, but let's watch. Y'all wanted me to do this, so let's get into it.
At 16 years old, Britney was a sensation, and she was no one-hit wonder. From 1998 to 2003, her worldwide record sales totaled over $73 million.
Britney had a work ethic like none other. She just was doing something she loved.
She was in control and involved in every process.
I'm open to ideas. I mean, if they come up with something better than me, then heck, I'll do it.
She was like, I'm the boss. I'm gonna do what I want.
Let me just say, we just got to the beginning and I'm already got goosebumps. Like, I don't know. I loved her music growing up, but I don't think that I really appreciated just how badass she was and like how much work she was putting in. Like, she didn't have a badass image, but you know what I mean? Like, she was calling the shots. She was professional. She was working really hard at it. It's really easy to write off a pop princess for just like singing pop songs and it being simple and easy, but like she seemed to know what she wanted and she's like fit as hell. I just feel like we didn't take her seriously even though she was wicked talented. You know what I mean? She didn't deserve it.
But 2 years later, the marriage was over, and Britney had filed for divorce.
It's the biggest news in the country, ladies and gentlemen. Britney Spears is leaving K-Fed!
Were we really like that? Did we really care that much? Why did we hate K-Fed again? I feel like I just remember he seemed kind of seemed like a schmuck or something. But like, were we really that obsessed? Was it really the biggest news in the country when she left K-Fed? I don't remember that, but I mean, I believe it. 2006, I was 14. I was so deep into like My Chemical Romance. I was not listening to Britney Spears anymore, so I guess I was a little out of the loop in my own little MySpace emo fantasy world.
This is a job for adrenaline junkies and those with a gambling addiction. And there's nothing sexier than waking up and they say, this is your assignment. You open it up and you don't know who it is. Male, female, actor, singer, sports, celebrity. So as a photographer, we can get a few $100,000 for a picture of Britney.
How is this legal? Oh, I'm the lawyer here? Right, okay. How is this legal? Let's talk about it. Okay, I've talked about this before. I'll link a couple videos above where I've talked about it, but basically when you leave your house and you're out and about in public, you do not have an expectation of privacy. Therefore, someone can come up and take your picture and there's not really much you can do about it. However, if they use your likeness to sell a good or a service, a product of some sort, then that could open them up to liability if you haven't given them permission. For example, one time Katherine Heigl was leaving a drugstore, a paparazzi shot a photo of her with the bags with the logo on it. That drugstore took that paparazzi photo, tweeted it saying like, even Katherine Heigl shops here. Katherine Heigl sues the drugstore and wins because you are not allowed to use someone else's likeness without their permission to sell things. You cannot profit off of their likeness, their face, without their permission. But that only goes so far. That only covers if you are actively trying to sell goods or services. Because of course that begs the question, like, hello, these paparazzi, he just said, are benefiting financially thousands of dollars from taking these celebrities' photos and then selling them to tabloids. Isn't that profiting off someone's likeness? Yes. Yes, it is. But for some reason, the law has drawn a line in the sand that's like, you can't sell well, not for some reason, we'll get into why, but they've drawn a line in the sand that says you cannot use a person's face on like an ad that's like, buy this toothpaste, here's a person's face smiling. They didn't give permission to use that picture, okay, then they can sue. But if it's taking a picture of someone who doesn't have an expectation of privacy because they're outside, out and about, and then selling it to a tabloid for money, but not to sell products, just giving it to this tabloid for money and you own the copyright and the image, that's fine. And then the tabloid takes it and prints it, also fine because they're print media. The reason for this is because of that pesky First Amendment. Yes, we want to protect people's speech and expression and freedom of the press over people's right to not have their likeness taken and printed when they're out in public with no expectation of privacy. Especially when it comes to print media, we want people to be able to go out and take pictures of newsworthy events so that they can be printed and shared. Like, that's a value we hold very close, theoretically, in this country, this freedom of the press, freedom to be able to share the news. It's for the public good to protect that freedom and to not allow someone to sue every time their image is used while they're out in public. This idea has obviously been stretched to its limits when it comes to paparazzi, because like, did our founding fathers in writing the First Amendment think, yes, we want paparazzi to be able to careen down the streets going after celebrities to get a picture of their photo to put in a trash magazine so that we could gossip about them? Probably not. I mean, none of those concepts existed in the 1770s, but you know, you get my drift. Like, it's not exactly the values that we're trying to espouse when we're trying to protect freedom of the press. However, on the other side, there is the argument that once you start chipping away at the ability for any sort of print magazine to not publish things, newsworthy things, who gets to decide what's newsworthy? You know, once you start down that path, it can lead to a chipping away of the freedom of the press that could be dangerous to free expression, open sharing of news, etc., etc., etc. Paparazzi are taking advantage of this value that we hold dear, that is freedom of expression, of the press, and of speech. There is, however, a law in California that criminalizes anyone who drives recklessly in pursuit of taking a photo for commercial gain. Like, it's clearly written for paparazzi to say, like, you cannot drive recklessly and endanger other people's lives in order to get this photo. A lot of these laws passed, especially in England, after the death of Princess Diana, because she died in Paris in her limousine while it was trying to get away from paparazzi. However, this law banning reckless driving in pursuit of a photo for commercial gain wasn't passed until 2010. So this was before that law passed. Interestingly, that law was first used against a photographer in 2012 who engaged in reckless driving while trying to obtain a picture of Justin Bieber. However, in that case with Justin Bieber, the trial court held that the law was unconstitutional because they said that it was barring freedom of speech and freedom of expression by saying that someone couldn't pursue this photos for commercial gain. They were saying that the law was just too broad and it included speech that was protected by the First Amendment. However, that case was then appealed and the appellate court overturned that ruling, saying that this law against reckless driving was constitutional because it was narrowly tailored. It was specific to reckless driving in pursuit of commercial gain, and it was meant to curb dangerous behavior, not to curb expression or the press. Last I checked, that is good law in California. There is also a law in California, which was passed back in 1998, that bans the use of telephoto lenses and other kind of surveillance mechanisms to obtain photography for commercial gain, where someone has an expectation of privacy. Meaning, a paparazzi can't sit outside a celebrity's home and get this long telephoto lens and zoom into their window and take photos of them inside their house. Because they're inside their house, they have an expectation of privacy. They can use a telephoto lens if a celebrity's on the beach in public, that's fine. But if they're in their house, they can't use like drones to fly over the house, they can't use telephoto lenses, things like that are banned in California. And probably there are other states that have that, but I'm focusing on California because that's where this takes place. Paparazzi law, who knew?
It was a very simple, very easy relationship, you know? But between her fans and everybody else, it was like I was the bad guy.
Sorry, clearly I was not paying attention to Britney Spears in 2007 or 8 or whatever. That took a turn I was not expecting. She dated a paparazzi? I don't know, man. What is this line? Was this cool in 2008? I don't ever remember that being cool.
What was apparent to me during this divorce with Kevin was, you know, she never had one person she could trust. Not one. Not mom, not dad, not friends, not assistant, anybody. And that's a very scary, dark place to be.
Britney, why am I tearing up? That's so awful. I don't know. I think these photos are like really striking of her just like being a girl sitting on a back porch with a boy that she likes, smoking a cigarette and flirting with him. Who hasn't been there? But then on top of that, she's this girl that the entire world is obsessed with, and she's just being constantly hounded, and she's got the weight of being perfect on her shoulders on top of the weight of getting divorced and going through a child custody battle. Britney! I feel like dating a paparazzi though, that's some like Stockholm syndrome shit. That's like, do I love these people who are constantly assaulting me on the street? Though, you know, I bet it was nice to have someone who has experience with paparazzi as a paparazzi to then be the person who's like protecting you from the paparazzi, you know what I mean? I wonder if he like quit being a paparazzi after this, like gained a conscience and was like, oh, I'm ruining people's lives? Sick, maybe I'll find a different pastime, you know?
He seemed to love being the spokesperson for this high-profile divorce and custody case.
I'm I'm sorry, I didn't realize that these documentary makers were badass.
He definitely has a flair for making a public statement.
The ultimate attack is, how are the children doing? How safe are the children? The kids become just pawns.
I am so interested in family law. That's what this is called, divorce, custody battles, that kind of thing, family law. I don't know if I could actually practice family law because I feel like it would just be like bickering every day and trying to like solve the squabbles of like people who have deep issues in their marriage and are trying to end it, or it would just be really depressing because it's like parents losing sight of like their children and what's in their best interests. But also, like, you'd probably get some hot goss. You know what I mean? But I don't think big picture I would want to like spend my life helping people like divorce every day. Or maybe I would literally dump them, you know what I mean? Anyway, sorry, I've digressed with this temporary midlife crisis, but we're back on track. It is true that the most important question in a custody battle is what is in the best interest of the child. And to determine this, the court weighs a number of factors. They look at the children's relationship with each parent. They look at each parent's income, where they're living, if they're living in the family home versus having moved across the country to a different location, that's going to come into play because the goal is to keep the child as stable as possible, and often the way that you do that is by keeping them from like moving or keeping them away from as much upset, change, instability as possible, and it's case specific. But again, that question of what is in the best interest of the child is the central question when it comes to custody issues. And obviously this kind of thing can get really contentious and can be horrible and stressful and feel awful because you could make a wrong move and then it could affect your ability to keep your children as this is ongoing, and it can take years to play out in court.
This is one of the most important filings in the entire conservatorship because when someone is being made a conservatee, they're entitled to 5 days heads up so that if they want to contest it or find a lawyer, etc., they have the time to do that. The only reason given for depriving Britney of 5 days notice is that 𝗦𝗦𝗣𝗦𝗢 is dangerous and needs to be kept away.
That's fascinating. So that 5 days notice provision is likely to ensure Britney's due process. You see, under the 5th and the 14th Amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America, ever heard of it? People have the right, when being deprived of life, liberty, or property, to receive due process of the law. In other words, it is unconstitutional to deprive someone of their life, liberty, or property without giving them due process. What the heck is due process? Well, it depends. Basically, and typically, it means notice and a hearing. Meaning the person is owed notice that their liberty or their property is being taken away from them, and they're due a hearing, a time to go before a judge and present their case against having that life or liberty taken away from them. By ensuring that people are given that due process, notice, and a hearing, we're ensuring that they know what's happening to them and that they have the opportunity to contest it in court before their life, liberty, or property is taken away. This applies to a lot of things, including things you might not realize. For example, if you are receiving unemployment benefits and then they just take them away from you and they haven't given you notice or a time to contest it, that's against your due process rights usually. Usually, not always, but can be. Again, this is not legal advice. I am not your lawyer. Never forget. Here, obviously, Britney's property and liberty rights are both being pretty much completely revoked when a conservatorship is put in place, so it's like really important that she was given notice and a hearing. However, it appears in the conservatorship process there is a way to waive that notice period, the 5 days notice that she would have, in the case of an emergency circumstance. So it looks like they use this 𝗦𝗦𝗣𝗦𝗢 character as the emergency that they needed to protect her from. Seems like we shouldn't necessarily be so quick to get rid of someone's due process rights, you know? Again, I think this comes from the paternalistic idea of conservatorship law, which is like, this person needs to be protected at all costs, so we will just take away their rights in order to do it, even though, like, what does protected mean? Seems like there's not much oversight. Because of this danger that they determined she was in, they were able to waive that 5-day notice. If she had had that 5-day notice, again, this was before the conservatorship was in place, she could have gotten her wits about her, hired an attorney, figured out what her next steps were, figured out what the heck a conservatorship even was, and then prepared and contested it in court. Because she didn't have that time, she didn't have these rights that are supposed to be due to her before her liberty and her property are taken from her. Fucking snakes.
Britney and I had become close. I could shoot her in a way that, you know, like not all the other camera people could. And so then we just, you know, developed this sort of close-knit friendship. There were a lot of times she would ask me for help, whether it was questions about legal issues or, you know, stuff about conservatorships.
So I'm noticing this trend of her like finding handsome men to be her protectors and her confidants. And if that ain't a sign of childhood trauma, I don't know what is. Someone had a father figure who wasn't present for her in the way that she needed. This is not a legal opinion.
I thought the documents were going to be delivered right away. I was told there would be an ex parte hearing immediately to address this, but then days passed.
Hearings are almost never immediate. You want something in the law to be done immediately, you're gonna be sorely disappointed, my dude. It's true that we guard this attorney-client relationship like this sacred cow. Like, in order to be able to enter into this relationship, you have to be mentally competent. And a lot of times it's for good reason, because lawyers are given a lot of power over their clients in terms of their ability to like bind them legally to things. So we want to make sure that especially vulnerable clients or anyone is not taken advantage of by like bad actors, bad legal actors, of which you might be surprised to find out there are many. Probably didn't know that about lawyers, but some of them are bad. And so then it creates this attorney-client privilege, which exists so that attorneys can't go out and just like blab about their clients to anyone, because if you don't have that trust in your attorney, then like what's the point of having an attorney? You need to have that trust in order for them to be able to give you good legal representation and for you to get what you want out of an attorney-client relationship. So I fully understand the goal of protecting people from lawyers who are bad at their jobs or who do not have people's best interests at heart. We want to make sure that someone who is entering an attorney-client relationship is competent enough to determine who should be representing them. I get that. I get that. However, it is incredibly paternalistic to see someone say in written and signed form that they do not trust their lawyer and that they want to hire their own, and to say like, nah, you're incapacitated, bye. Like when someone says, I don't trust my lawyer, we should be listening to them. If you really value this attorney-client relationship so much, then you should want clients to trust their lawyers, especially their court-appointed lawyers. You know, the ones that they didn't choose themselves. That being said, do people frivolously fire lawyers because they don't understand that it's not really the lawyer's fault and that it's actually the system and the law not working for them? Yes, all the time. And I think that's where the paternalism comes in. Like, well, they don't understand that their lawyer is like doing their best and that it's up to the law and to judges to make a lot of determinations, and things don't always go the way that you want, even if you have the best lawyer in the world. So we don't want to allow people to just frivolously fire their lawyers all the time. I get that, but when someone says, I do not trust my lawyer, that should be all it takes, period. The world is filled with lawyers. Let them find one that they actually trust. And if the court doesn't think that a person is capable to do so, maybe the court should have something in place, an advisor or something, to assist the person in finding counsel that they actually trust. Like, this isn't rocket science here. There are concrete solutions. Dementia my ass. If she can do that while having dementia, what the hell is wrong with me? You know what I mean?
I don't understand how the legal system has let this go on for so long. I mean, maybe it's like the first one of its kind and they don't really know how to handle it. But it seems like it's an epic fail of the legal system that this has gone on for so long and that there's been like no resolution even. It just seems like it keeps getting worse.
I think he's exactly right. I think this is mainly just an epic failure of our legal system. Like, the conflict of interest that exists in conservatorships is astounding. The fact that everyone running the conservatorship benefits from its continuation because they're being paid by the conservatorship, it makes no sense. Because this includes the person who is supposed to be looking out for the best interests of the conservatee. Her lawyer, with whom she's supposed to have this sacred attorney-client privilege, who's supposed to say, hey, she doesn't want a conservatorship anymore if that is the case, because if you're a lawyer representing someone, you are ethically obligated to represent what they want. However, he's being paid millions of dollars because of the continuation of this conservatorship. The conflict of interest alone should be enough to like prove the need for an overhaul of the system. Sam Ingham, her court-appointed lawyer, which as they make the point here in this movie, like he's court-appointed, yes, but he's paid from the conservatorship and paid handsomely from the conservatorship. He made nearly $3 million as her court-appointed lawyer over the course of the conservatorship. And like the film says, things started unraveling this summer in the Britney Spears conservatorship, likely from the heightened public scrutiny that her case was getting. In June, she made a statement to the court that ended up being leaked publicly, saying that she very much did not want the conservatorship to continue, that she felt like she was being taken advantage of, and like she wanted to be able to live her own life.
It's embarrassing and demoralizing what I've been through, and that's the main reason. I've never said it openly.
In July, Sam Ingham, her court-appointed lawyer, resigned, probably because it was becoming pretty obvious that he was doing a pretty bad job, and it was probably in his best interest to resign in order to avoid facing like professional consequences for not advocating for what his client wanted over the last 13 years. This is of course all alleged. From the outside, it doesn't look very good. So now she has a new attorney. His name is Matthew Rosengart, and he's considered this pretty high-powered media and entertainment lawyer out of the California office of 𝗧𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 celebrities like Sean Penn, for example, and he's known for being tough as nails. Anyway, once she hired him, he immediately began pushing for the end of her conservatorship. And then on September 7th, Jamie Spears actually petitioned the court to end the conservatorship, which, like, at first I thought was kind of wild, because I was like, didn't he want that? Doesn't he want that to continue? Is he, like, turning over a new leaf? He's like a good guy now? But turns out not so much, allegedly. So on September 29th, before they were able to have any hearing about ending the conservatorship, Jamie was suspended from being conservator of Britney Spears. And the court said that having him as a conservator was not in Britney Spears' best interests. No shit. During that September 29th hearing, Britney's lawyer Rosengart described Jamie Spears as a cruel, toxic, and abusive man. And Rosengart, not at the hearing, but in interviews with the press, has indicated that he's going to continue investigating potential financial abuses and what was happening behind the scenes during the conservatorship, which indicates to me that he is in the process of determining what types of lawsuits and might be brought against Jamie Spears due to his actions during the course of this conservatorship, meaning there will probably be future lawsuits against Jamie on behalf of Britney Spears and probably other members of the conservatorship. And Rosengart, her attorney, is a former prosecutor, not in California, but he likely has ties to prosecutors in California. And so it's unclear, but there could also be criminal investigations that could unfold as a result of this conservatorship. Okay, so the current state of the conservatorship, it is still intact. There is a petition to end it that was entered September 7th, again by Jamie himself. The hearing has not taken place on that yet, so it is still intact. A temporary conservator has been put in place. He's a CPA, an accountant, and he was chosen by Britney. His name is John Zabel. So the goal is to have Jamie turn over all of that information, all of the books, all of the paperwork, everything to this new conservator, the CPA, which he is supposed to do in order for the CPA to be able to properly run the conservatorship, and then hopefully Britney's legal team would be able to then use that information in future litigation. So Britney's new legal team, their theory is that the reason why Jamie petitioned the court to end the conservatorship back on September 7th is because then the conservatorship would just go away and it would just be done, and he wouldn't have to, like, turn over documents. Now, however, with him removed as the conservator and a new one put in place, he would be required to turn over everything, which could include some pretty damning evidence. Okay, so again, there's a petition before the court to end the conservatorship. The hearing for that is on November 12th. So it's possible that in a couple weeks, the court could rule that the conservatorship should be terminated. Though with something like this, you know, like the end of a multi-million-dollar conservatorship that spanned 13 years and involves arguably the most famous female pop star in history, there's really no roadmap for how this works. So it's likely that the unwinding of the conservatorship could take a very long time. People are hopeful though, because it could mean that her conservatorship would be ruled terminated right before her 40th birthday on December 2nd. You know we stand a Sagittarius queen. But if you do that math, it means that she has been under this conservatorship since she was 27 and she turns 40 in a few weeks. Yikes. This documentary was really well done, and it really painted her in this light of being just like this really trapped human that needs our help. I don't know, something about this documentary, it hit me right in my heart. I'm hopeful. We'll see what happens November 12th, but it also appears based on her recent social media posts that Britney is already experiencing a greater level of freedom than she's had in over a decade. So you love to see it. You love to see someone just posting a picture of their ass on Instagram because it makes them feel free. I'm very excited for this hopefully new chapter in Britney Spears' life. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little recap. Comment below if you have questions or if you want to see other videos from me, if you have other ideas. If you want more access to behind the scenes footage, more information about me, you want to talk to me more directly, consider joining my Patreon community. Yes, I have a Patreon. We do private live streams, we have a Discord chat, I write you little posts once a week to talk about my life, I send you little pictures about what I'm doing day to day. It's a really fun place. And a special shout out to my patrons, 𝗦𝗘𝗥𝗡𝗡𝗦 and Anonymous, you know who you are, thank you so much for your ongoing support. Also a reminder to check out the super special merch store, link in the description down below, and check out my consulting services if you are a content creator who might need some legal advice or just advice on creating content and what that's like. Or if you're a law student, you want to talk to someone who's been through it all. Book a session with me today. Reminder that I also stream over on Twitch. Lately, the schedule has been Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, but you know what? It's subject to change. Follow me over on Twitter if you want to keep updated on that schedule. I play Sims. Recently, I've been doing the lawyer career track on Sims. And then I also play Siberia, which is a fun 2002 game about a lawyer going on a European adventure trying to uncover a mystery. So we have a real fun time over there on Twitch, so consider joining me. All of that is linked in the description down below. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you have a lovely week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I love you. Bye-bye.